So today we're talking about the ability to focus. So that word focus, right? We have spoken about this topic before. Today, I've got a lot of research that we've compiled in terms of focus for an individual, focus for an organization, SME or a large enterprise, large corporate, who employ thousands of people. When you think about companies like Google and Meta, how many people they have in their overall global workforce. The word focus which equals lack of productivity or efficiency standards can cost billions of dollars to their bottom line, right? So it's a really interesting topic. I think focus is a topic that corporations certainly, and maybe even individuals, don't think about a lot. I think people understand, or they have a high level understanding or broad understanding of what focus means, but without any depth or without any research. So today, we have a lot of research. The research has been conducted by a few different companies. So I've taken some of this data. I want everyone to know that we don't make this stuff up. We actually have to go and do the research and look at some of this information. We've used Insightful as our main source of data. They have the largest amount of research and white papers conducted. Now, they're a workforce intelligence software organization, so they have millions of employees running through their software, and this is what their data is telling them. So I'm going to release some of that data today, plus a whole bunch of other research papers from universities and other serious players in the market. So I want to start with the definition of focus, though. I think it's always a good place to start. The word focus comes from Latin, and Latin focus literally meant hearth or fireplace, the central place in a home where the fire kept burning. In the 17th century, the term was adopted into scientific Latin by the astronomer Johannes Kepler, who used focus to describe a special point inside an ellipse where rays of light or planetary orbits converge. Right? In the 1600s, first in mathematical optical context, meaning the point where rays met. Later, by metaphorical extension, it came to mean the center of interest or attention, which is where it sits today. So that's the term focus. I've got a whole bunch of data here. I'm going to start to run through that and break that down. And then what I'll go through is some of the metrics. I want to talk about some of the top workplace distractions as researched by some of the data that we have today, and some of the solutions that we can probably deploy personally, individually, as a CEO, as a director, a founder in a company, to help our businesses thrive and to ensure that we're being efficient every day. I think my personal view on it is, since, the global pandemic really changed the workforce market, just completely. And did it go back to where it was? No, it didn't. It changed basically forever. So companies have to re-engineer and rewire the architecture of how they manage their companies. From a personal and psychological perspective, from a structural and commercial perspective, and from a governance perspective, right? Even in terms of the data in which they look at to make good quantitative decisions in their companies, especially if you're a large billion-dollar corporate, these 1% minute changes or pieces of execution inside a business can really, really add to the bottom line, like significantly. So I'll run through some of the data. Now, again, this is a lot of work taken from Insightful's workforce intelligence software platform. Let's dive into it. Time lost to distraction, right? If we talk about focus, the enemy to focus is distraction. We all know what that means for us. We all get distracted. I also get distracted. It's very hard to stay on point with it and keep in check. Studies show employees lose 720 work hours per year, nearly 3 full work weeks, due to general distractions. And after an interruption or a distraction, it takes on average 23 minutes to fully refocus on the initial task. That's incredible. 720 work hours per year. So that's 3 weeks due to just distraction. Like, that's incredible. There's another report I've got here. Check this out. How much time do managers estimate employees lose to lost focus weekly? The biggest number on this chart, which is 34%, is 6 to 10 hours per week is lost in efficiency and production per employee. Like 6 to 10 hours, that's a full day. So they're paying their workforce for a 5-day week, 38-hour, 40-hour week, but really getting a reduced efficiency level of only 4 days out of that, right? So when you attribute that financially to the bottom line and you're trying to, especially if you're running your numbers right, especially sales numbers, I always think, okay, if we run our sales numbers based on 20 work days in a month, well, it's actually not 20 anymore, right? It's 16, like when you think about it. So that's how it impacts the bottom line and how it impacts sales revenue for your company. So these are really astonishing numbers. The second highest number on this report is 35.67% for 1 to 5 hours, right? But those are the two biggest numbers on the chart for managers estimating employee lose due to lack of focus. Per week, not per month, per week, not per year, per week. It's incredible. Some attributes or contributions to that. Task switching and interruptions. This is all from the same report. Knowledge. Here we go. Workers switch tasks approximately every 3 minutes. And once disrupted, it can take up to half an hour to reassume the original task. Workers switch tasks approximately every 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Workers encounter an average of 15 interruptions per hour, meaning a distraction about every 4 minutes. That's incredible. From my own experience, sometimes, just sitting in my office in that first hour to 2 hours of the day, which normally there's a lot going on in our companies. So there's a lot of pitching and catching, a lot of conversation to have, which is great. I think it'll be super positive. Doing morning stand-ups and trying to figure out what's not working, how people can contribute, I think is super powerful. But the issue is that when you walk away from those meetings and you need to go and do deep work, is that deep work continues to be interrupted throughout the course of the day. In my experience, it happens more in the morning than it does in the afternoon. There's also research in some of these white papers that state that when an employee gets to the end of the work cycle later in the afternoon, productivity decreases, right? So there's two things happening here: distraction, decreasing productivity and efficiencies, and also just human organic decreases in productivity due to the time of the day, how they're feeling, external influences to them and their personal lives, and that sort of stuff. So, it's super interesting to look at numbers like this to help companies navigate it. So if you have a company, the whole point of today's ep was to unpack some of the details about just the lack of focus and how much it impacts your bottom line, your P&L, the growth of your company, if you're in the middle of scaling your company, just things you need to consider. I think you have to write that into business planning now. And I certainly think you have to write it into the P&L. Now, based on this research that we've conducted for today's app, I'd take this now to our own strategy, and we might apply some of these metrics to our forecast for 2026, which is a very ambitious forecast. Okay, so here's some research on the Australian economy. So this is economic impact of distraction. Australian employees lose 600 hours annually to workplace distractions, equivalent to 15 work weeks. So that's high. So that's more that was in the UK and the US, like dramatically more. In the US, distracted employees cost the businesses an estimated $650 billion per year. $650 billion per year. What's their economy? What's the US economy in total? It's at 3.8 trillion. I think it's something like that. So that's a considerable amount of revenue that's being researched on. Some estimates suggest social media distractions cost around $4,500 per employee annually, which is super interesting. And cell phone, mobile phone account usage delivered a 55% drop in work productivity. So that's a company called Traffic who did a white paper based on Insightful's data that was released to the market in 24. So that's incredible. Australian employees lose 600 hours annually to workplace distractions. It doesn't say what that's spread across, but that's a significant number. And the last number in that group is distractions can cause up to 34.6% productivity loss, akin to hiring 346 extra staff in a 1,000-person company. Man, that's incredible. So what happens if you work for yourself, right? You could extrapolate those metrics to yourself individually and figure out how productive and efficient are you being based on the amount of time you're contributing, right? So, you know, when you think you're working, mate, I'm really working hard and putting in 60, 70 hours a week, outside of me saying, as usual, what are you doing with the other 30, is that if you look at it, well, out of the 60 or 70 hours, what is actually producing results? So today's app is also about, okay, how do we turn that around, right? So there's some simple strategies at the end of today's session that I'll quickly run through to give you some ideas on what that looks like. But, you know, if you look at a 1,000-person company with a production loss of 34.6%, akin to hiring 346 extra staff based on some of those previous metrics, like, you should just stop and reevaluate. If you're a large company, how you review your metrics and how you review your forecasting. That's certainly what we're going to do. So frequency and nature of distractions. A staggering 99% of employees report experiencing distractions at work, with 81% frequently distracted. 98% of workers face at least 3 to 4 interruptions daily, and the average employee experiences 60 distractions each day. So the average employee. I think what they're saying there is between middle management, senior management, and C-level executives through to entry-level staff, right? Or junior staff. So the high number will attribute to junior staff, and the lower number attributes to a management level hierarchy. So these distractions at that lower level attribute to an hour or more of lost time in their production day. I think that's why they probably come to attribute to 6 to 10 hours a day, because it's normally about maybe 1 to 2 hours a day in distractions, right? Okay, that's pretty incredible. The summary table, if we take all the data from this report and we put it into one summary table, annual lost hours between UK, America, and Australia is 600 to 720 hours per employee per year. Time to refocus per interruptions based on survey results is 23 minutes. So it takes you 23 minutes on average to refocus, to get back on hand, to be productive. 23 minutes. Look, there's a sliding scale to that, I think. You know, if you look at efficiency ratios, when you start, it's low. When you get, you know, maybe to minute 10, it increases, but it's really sort of hard to determine what that would look like on a graph. Task switching frequency every 3 minutes. So what that means is people are sitting there and they're not finishing their tasks, right? They're knocking down the first level and building another one next door, just constantly every 3 minutes. I see that. I think that's real. I think that statement's accurate. Sometimes I used to be that person as well. I don't do that anymore. I have some strategies around that, which I'll talk about soon, but that's an incredible metric. Interruptions per hour, 15 interruptions at 4 minutes each. So between 3 countries, this is saying that interruptions per hour, what was surveyed is 15 interruptions at 4 minutes a piece. That's a lot. So productivity loss potential is up to 35%. And the national economic impact, if we were to convert it into USD, is $650 billion annually. That's incredible. So based on 600 to 720 hours, that's $1.7 billion an hour, something like that. The number that jumps off the page at me is up to 35%. So productivity loss potential is up to 35%. If you run your financials, your P&L, and your forecasting on the productivity of an element, and let's just use sales because that's a really good place to start. When you run your sales figures without incorporating wastage, right? Well, let's call this wastage for lack of a better term. This is saying 35%. So if your number is to hit $1 million, based on everyone working 5 days a week for a certain amount of time, I understand that you'll pull out holidays. We have a metric for sick days on average. If people are taking out holidays, we try to forecast that in. We come down to a daily metric for a sales target, broken down and divided by the quantity of agents that are running and working within that business. And then any time they take off, we just detract the daily annual sales amount, which equates to a weekly, monthly, and quarterly KPI, and then we subtract it. But what we don't do is we don't factor in production or productivity loss. Because this is saying on average across 3 countries, it's 35%. Now, if we don't do that, we might seriously be missing our numbers. It's funny, in the last quarter, we did pretty well on our numbers, which is certainly one of our busiest quarters of the year. We're on average about 8 to 12% out each month. Actually, the last month we achieved over target, but the 2 months before that was about 8 to 12%. In the first quarter, it was probably around the 12% mark. And maybe I'm starting to understand that that might be an important metric to focus on and spend some time with, unpacking that a little bit more. Anyway, so super interesting numbers. By the way, download the playbook on this from today's app, which you can get by commenting, reading the notes, and DM us, and we'll give you access to that for free, right? For free. Great, yeah. Okay. In the survey, I've extracted a whole bunch of data around top workplace distractions. This is super interesting. These are actually in order of the level of distraction, right? So you could call it in chronological order. So number 1, what do you think number 1 is? Because I didn't think it was this. I thought, yeah, but what style or type of distraction?
Conversations.
Co-worker interruptions. Yes. Conversations. Yeah. 71% said that co-worker interruptions were their number 1 distraction across the whole survey across those 3 countries. All right. So that's just someone, you're walking to the bathroom, and when you come back, someone just starts talking to you, and then 5 or 10 minutes later, you're still in that conversation. Or you're in your office, someone walks past and walks in and asks you a question. Look, it's natural for human beings, as soon as something is not right or they don't understand something, is to pivot and ask someone, like immediately. And what we do is, I think we lose our natural abilities to be able to learn individually and vertically, where, what I try and do is I'll try and figure it out myself, especially if it's an IT problem. Can I figure this out myself, right? Like I had an issue this morning with my machine, and I just wanted to figure it out myself. I didn't want to, go to Zach or go to anyone else, because then if I can figure it out myself, the next time it happens, I'm just more efficient, right? So, and by the way, with AI and Google, you can basically research the solution to any problem and just fix it yourself. So, number 2 on the list, phone notifications, 62% that came in as reported as major disruptors, which is true. I thought that was going to be number 1, I'll be honest with you, and I thought emails would be number 2. But I didn't think it would be co-worker interruptions. Okay, number 3, email notifications, 32% listed frequent pings as distractions. 32% listed frequent pings as distractions. I get that. I hear it all the time, and see it as well. Number 4, chat apps. So Slack and Teams is what they've listed here specifically. 27% said these break concentration, right? Number 5, meetings, in person and virtual. 17% said they derail their focus during the course of a day. It's a tough one with virtuals, I think people having meetings for too long would be my take on it. I say have stand-up meetings so no one's sitting. You don't get comfortable. You don't want to be comfortable. You probably should say no coffees, guys. We're just going to get into it, and in 10 minutes we're out. Everyone has to get to the point, so it has to be agendaed, and then you have to build some strength around it. So when people come, they're not just talking about nothing. People just say all these words, and there's no actual real benefit from that discussion. So it's about what are the 1 or 2 or 3 key focuses for the day? What do you need support with? And what are going to prevent you from getting them done? And then the next day, how did you go yesterday? Bang, bang, bang. Done, great. I couldn't get the last one done, why? I need this, great. Well, let's take care of that today. Okay, so if we move that into today, what's your other 2 focuses for today? Because that should be broken on the goal of what needs to be achieved in the week, which is broken down on the month, or what needs to be achieved for the month. Normally, I find it's just random words and conversations about nothing. And none of it's really congruent. It's kind of bullshit. It's like people just saying stuff that has no focus. So there's no target for those words. I'm a bit like that though, and I think Founders are normally just like that. That's sort of how we think. CEOs are like that. That's how they think. So I think that's a big play or big part in that. So number 6 is frequent manager check-ins. Interesting. 22% felt these interrupt their work. There's this thing about micromanagement, right? Like people think, oh, I hate micromanagers. Yeah, but what does that even mean? You know, in a world where things have changed, like from a global pandemic, I don't really use the word COVID because I just didn't really get it. But when everything changed, micromanagement, I think, had to become something because people were a little bit lost and like Bambi wandering through the forest, right? They just needed guidance. And sometimes people think that's micromanagement, but it's actually not. I don't think it is. And I know CEOs who talk about this quite deeply, is that what they're trying to do is create focus for their employees. Because if you look at the data, they kind of need it, right? What's the plan? What are you doing today? Do you need any support? What's the plan? What are you doing today? Do you need any support? That's not micromanagement, that's focus. So I think there's a misinterpretation about what that looks like. Anyway, moving on. So number 7, personal device use. 42% admitted checking devices for personal reasons up to 5x a day. That's probably true. I think it's probably more than that, right? Come on. So that's why we take everyone's iPhones and we put them in a steel cage box and then we lock it at the front of the office. That's what we do. I don't know, I don't know whether that's appropriate or not, but we just do that. Or we throw them off the balcony so they can't use them at all, and we don't replace them. So, number 8, social media use at work, a significant source of personal distraction. Up to 40%. I get it. Everyone's like, doing this. Sometimes I catch myself stuck in a feed, especially if I'm standing in the lift or the elevator, depending on where you live in the world. Just scrolling. My feed's pretty good though. I want to ensure that my feed and the information I'm getting is pretty good. So it's normally sort of stuff like this, data and information that I can read. So maybe that's educational. I think what this is referring to is, watching firemen rescue cats out of trees, right? Or, dash hounds attacking birds in the park, which is super cool. Don't get me wrong, but it is a distraction. So. But I just think people lack the focus, and that's just a way of appeasing that part of the psychology, I guess. So number 9 was open office noise and chatter. Noisy, crowded environments reduce focus. Now, I remember reading a white paper on this in early 2000s, right? And it was completely opposite to that, where open office space became a thing. So they knocked down all the walls. It started in America, came to Australia, and through Europe, where walls were no longer good. Why? Because teams were not working together, was the research then. And now the research has changed to say that, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But again, environments change, the world changes, people changes, things influence that, like a global pandemic, and it, what goes around comes around, right? What will happen in the future? If you look at history, we know that it's going to happen again. I know it's slightly different with the inclusion of artificial intelligence, but if you attributed that to the introduction of the internet, wow, come on. Like we didn't see that coming. So, open office and noise chatter. Well, I don't know if I agree with, I kind of agree with it. I think it's good to have people working together as a team, but what the data is saying that people just interrupt each other constantly all day. So how can you have shared collaboration, but also create focus? What I was looking at the other day, this is not super interesting, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Sorry for boring you if you're watching this. But I was researching those quiet pods, right? Where some of them have doors and some of them don't, but you can't see anyone. Like you can't look around and see everybody. So you can sit there and get laser focused. They are soundproof. They don't have doors and people can walk past you and talk to you quite openly, so you can still be quite collaborative. sometimes it's about practical execution and finding results around things like this, or metrics around this. Right? I don't know, but I know that when you have a open environment, that it does get very noisy, and it's sometimes really hard to focus. So I guess maybe creating spaces in your workplace or in your business where people can walk away from that and get laser focused. Now, we have a couple of pods here. No one really uses them for that though. But I have an office, so I just close my door and I can get super focused. And rigid schedules and flexible work arrangements harm productivity. Ooh, there's one. Yeah, I've got something to say on that a little bit later from my own personal experience in the last 60 days, but maybe there's something in that, right? So those were the top 10 workplace distractions across the UK, the US, and Australia. So some interesting number there. So co-worker interruptions at 71% on top, phone notifications 62%, number 2, and number 3 was at 32% was email notifications. Simple, turn your goddamn phone off and turn your email off. Co-worker interruptions. It's simple, right? Here's the solution. Close your door, put your phone on silent or airplane mode, and close your email.